September 7th, 1876, in Northfield, Minnesota. A group of men, later identified as the James Younger Gang, attempted daylight robbery of the First National Bank. This act, bold and reckless, would mark a turning point in the life of one of America's most infamous outlaws, Jesse James. You're listening to Casual History. Hey everyone, my name is Jeff. I'm here with my co-host Jacob. This is Casual History. Welcome back. How you feeling today, Jake?
I am feeling fantastic, man. How about you? I'm ready to go to the Wild West.
That's where we're going. There's not too much personal casual history info to get into at the top. We're going to probably jump right into the story, but for those who care to jump in, check us out on social media, casualxhistory.com. Casual X History on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Anything
That's
for
right.
you, Jake?
No, always got to promote, man. Heck yeah. Check us out on all our socials. Obviously, we'll be really excited to see what your comments are about past episodes, as well as what you think of this one. So please feel free to join in.
Speaking of past episodes, last week I teased this story. It was one I found a couple weeks ago, and I've known I've wanted to go to the Wild West, and I knew once I went, we wouldn't go back. And we would want to do podcast after podcast in this era because there's so much to get into that we haven't even touched on. The Wild West in general, the Civil War in general, and just that whole transition period from the mid 1800s into the 1900s. And just kind of that piece of history is super interesting to me. I don't know if it's interesting to you, Jake, but okay,
I'm
good.
a fan of all things Western, man. And then plus there's so many, you're right. Like we've done podcasts on, other like Billy the Kid, stuff like that, that I remember like in the early pod days of Casual History. And so I'm excited to jump back in because I think about that all the time. Like there's so many wild characters from this era that you literally could have picked any one of them and it would have been a great story.
And there will be a few that I'll touch on because Jesse James ran with some really interesting people at different points in his life. And I give a little bit of overview, but I think quite a few of them deserve their own full depth story that I think we will definitely get into. But speaking of the man, the myth, the legend, Jesse James is who we're here talking about today. And it's a really good story, a really long one, I think. We'll see how much I can get through.
You got this.
Some stuff I didn't know. Like, there's quite a bit of his life that I didn't realize, and there's some really cool twists and turns and overall excitement that again, at the end of this, I just want to get your gauge on what you think of the man, because there's definitely two sides to him from doing my research. And yeah, I guess we'll see how you think about him at the end of this podcast.
Your biggest fan, always here, Jeffrey.
Okay, well, we shall see what you think.
Yes.
If you're ready to go, I'm ready to go. Let's jump in.
Yeah, let's dive right in.
So to set the scene and to fully grasp the story of Jesse James, we must transport ourselves, get ready, to the mid-19th century America.
It's like I'm there.
A nation grappling with profound changes. It was a period marked by rapid transformation, conflict, and reconstruction. The Civil War being a leading factor of that, which lasted from 1861 to 1865, had ended, but its aftermath continued to reverberate across the nation, especially in states like Missouri, where Jesse James was born and raised. Me and you, Jake, we know a thing about Missouri. We also lived there for a year or two, I think.
You think Jesse James ever ran into the Balknobbers?
Maybe. If you've been to Branson, Missouri, that's where when we were kids, we would be up there quite a bit because we lived in Oklahoma. Some unneeded backstory, but we know a thing or two about the Ozarks and Missouri.
Yeah. If you didn't get that reference, don't worry. I'm sure you're not alone. Very Missouri reference there.
Yeah. Well, Missouri, a border state during the Civil War, was torn between the Union and the Confederacy. It was in itself a microcosm of the nation's divide. Families were split, neighbor fought against neighbor, and guerrilla warfare ravaged the countryside. And it was in this environment that was a crucible that shaped Jesse James. His family's farm in Clay County, a region known for its support of the Confederacy, was a focal point for conflict. The James family in general, like many Missouriites, were caught in the crossfire of a divided nation. The war's impact on Missouri was profound, and it saw some of the most brutal guerrilla fighting of the entire conflict. Men like, you might recognize some of these, you might not. And again,
okay,
I fully intend to try to come back on a separate podcast, but I'm going to give some overviews of a few of these guys that James knew really well and were instrumental in shaping him as a teenager, which is wild to me to think about. But one of them is Bloody Bill Anderson.
Ooh.
And he didn't get that name for nothing, okay?
Yeah. I imagine.
Bloody Bill Anderson was a soldier who was one of the deadliest and most notorious Confederate guerrilla leaders in the American Civil War. Anderson led a band of volunteer partisan raiders who targeted Union loyalists and federal soldiers in the states of Missouri and Kansas. Okay, that's one of the characters in this scene that I'm painting here. Another character that was also involved is William Quantrill. I'm pretty sure you probably know a bit about him, Jacob. He was, I learned a little bit about him growing up just in school history class, knowing about the Civil War and the transition period, but also there's a few documentaries on him alone. And again, him in particular, I want to jump into. But here's a little side tangent for you, Jake, to kind of refresh your memory and for anyone listening about William Quantrill. William was a school teacher turned bandit / mass murderer. So
how does that happen?
How would you like that as your
what
Facebook,
kind of world
Twitter
where
bio?
a school teacher is like one day in a classroom,
yeah,
the next, like, that's wild.
Out on his horse with his band of bandits. He roamed Missouri and Kansas. It was, again, those two states were pivotal in this period of time. Basically, one of his main, I don't know how you want to say this, things he was doing was
right?
Going out on the countryside to apprehend escaped enslaved people. And the group became Confederate soldiers called Quantrill's Raiders, which were a pro-Confederate partisan ranger outfit best known for its brutal tactics, hence bloody William Quantrill. And he has a nickname. I don't have it in front of me, but they all get their bloody nicknames.
I'm starting to see why.
Bloody Bill. And each group, so at this point in time, so those two being some of the main leaders in the area at the time, Jesse James was a teenager, young kid growing up, and got involved with both of them. Each group, Jesse James would later join, and these groups were notorious for raids, ambushes, massacres, and the one in particular that I want to touch on, because this was really important to the shaping of Jesse James when he was a teenager, was the infamous Lawrence Massacre of 1963.
Okay, I'm a little fuzzy on the Lawrence Massacre. You're going to have to give me a little info on this.
Way to set that up for me, because don't you worry, we're going to get into it.
Yes, please, more.
The Lawrence Massacre was led by Quantrill at the time. So this is when Jesse James was a teenager, and he was working, I'll just say working, he was with the band of Quantrill Raiders, okay?
I'm sure it was work.
Yeah, I'm sure it was.
Light work.
Yeah, it was heavy work. And so the Lawrence Massacre would be one of the most pivotal points for Jesse James in his life, and one that really shapes him. And I wanted to set it up early because it's really from this lens that we can kind of view his history coming off of that. Because this is something that happened when he was really young-ish, okay? But this is really the point that he became a hardened criminal man.
Oh no, what happened to this man? What happened?
Right? So,
he saw too much.
Yeah. Well, it was in August 21st, 1863, William Quantrill led a group of Confederate guerrillas in a raid on Lawrence, Kansas, which was a stronghold of abolitionist support and key supply point for Union forces at the time. The attack was one of the most brutal incidents of the Civil War in its entirety and influenced Jesse James's worldview. So
Wow.
Lawrence was targeted not only for its strategic importance at the time, but also for its symbolic value. So the city was known for its hardened anti-slavery stance and had been a center for Bleeding Kansas conflict, which was a series of violent confrontations between pro and anti-slavery factions in Kansas territory before the Civil War. So there's a little bit of, again, there's hardened bloodshed here on beliefs, and it kind of centers around this town that is kind of seen as the symbol of that movement at the time, which the movement was equal rights, which is crazy.
Yeah.
And yeah, so not a good scene to paint, but it's just what happened. Okay. So Quantrill's raiders, including young men who would later become key figures in other outlaw bands, viewed the attack as retribution. The raid began at dawn and quickly turned into a massacre. Quantrill's men killed around 200 men and boys, sparing neither the young nor the old, and they burned a significant portion of the town, leaving Lawrence as a whole in ruins.
Holy shit.
Yeah. I can let that sit in for a second.
Just I'm like picturing it in my mind right now, and just like that's horrifying even just to like start picturing.
Yeah. Man. There was, again, the brutality and how these leaders came to be feared was through horrific war crimes and horrific acts. And so the brutality of this attack shocked the entire nation, not in its entirety, even if you were on either side. It was not a battle, but a calculated act of terror. And it was aimed at striking fear into the hearts of Union supporters at the time and abolitionists.
Wow. So it was trying to be a statement. Wow.
Exactly. Exactly. And to kind of understand why is why I touched on the history of the city and how it had been a focal point up to this point, before it was left in ruins, of being a key center of support for anti-slavery. And so Jesse James, who was a part of this, was only a teenager at the time. The Lawrence Massacre was a defining moment, though not... Oh, I'm so sorry. Let me correct myself. He was a part of the raiders, but he did not join in this particular raid. But he was deeply influenced, essentially, by the guerrilla warfare tactics of Quantrill and his men. So even after this, he was still a part of the raiders, like before and after. I don't know what kept him from this raid, or maybe Quantrill didn't think he was old enough to do this, or maybe I really don't know the backstory in that deep a fashion. This is part of the reason why I think it's a whole other podcast.
Yeah.
On Quantrill himself.
Small clarification here.
Yeah.
When you say affected him, obviously from my stance, from just hearing this for the first time, I'm thinking negative response, which I think would be most people's reaction. But he was a part of the gang. And so this led him more towards a more hardened stance, like more violent. Yeah,
exactly. Well, it sets the scene for how he is seeing how things have to be done. Right.
Oh, wow.
In the way of being a leader in this group, this world that he's in right now, where there's, like I said, all the turmoil, and there's packs of raiders and different kind of gangs and all over the place at this point.
Right.
And he's seeing from these people like Bloody Bill and Quantrill how you lead a gang, how you become feared, and how you command respect is through brutality.
Dude, I'm already scared. I'm already scared for what the rest of the story is going to be if it starts with a massacre. I don't...
I'm just trying to, give it to you straight, Jake.
Yeah, this is insane. To be honest with you, I don't have much context behind the name of Jesse James. I just know the name, just like how everybody else, like, when you talk about the Wild West and you talk about key figures, like I have no background into good guy, bad guy, besides like how the world paints him now with his name, which is like, you just associate Jesse James with badass cowboy. But hearing this, like obviously a real person, experienced real trauma, also was a part of inflicting that, it sounds like, and I'm sure we're going to get very heavy into that. We will
get into that, yeah.
And so this is going to be very interesting that I'm going to actually have, after this podcast, I'm going to have an opinion on whether this guy was a good guy or not.
Which is something, not to be a plug, but if those of you who are listening, I'm truly interested in, at the end of this, if you get to the end, let us know what you think about Jesse James or your opinion on him. And maybe there's pieces of information I'm not aware of, but I really, truly want to hear the feedback, because I had a range of emotions working through this podcast and writing this up and putting this together, because he's obviously a man with ambition, but he also is a product of his environment. And one of the products of his environment are massacres and brutality and gangs and intensity.
And then just trying to understand how his name became like detached from his real story almost. And it's just become a spoken, like, you know, like when you think of the Wild West, you think of Jesse James, you think of Buffalo Bill, you think of all those like major names, but you separate kind of like their life story. And so, this is so interesting.
It's not as tactile, you know, when you're viewing it from so far away, it feels a little bit dreamy. Like it doesn't feel as real. Like when I'm trying to go through the realistic raids and other acts that he, in his life in general, you start to try to put together a realistic piece that feels, again, like I'm thinking of someone who's alive now.
Right.
And it puts a different perspective on it, which is really, I think, interesting, and part of the reason I love doing this.
Yeah. I think that's why this is important. Like being able to discuss it like this, because otherwise I would have gone my entire life just like thinking of the name Jesse James with nothing tied to it. And now, like, now I'm actually going to hear kind of how he got his name, but also I'm very interested to see how he becomes that legend. Because he sounds already like he might be a controversial figure.
He definitely is. And I wanted to set this up because it was within this context, specifically his environment, that I think Jesse's later choices and actions as an outlaw should be viewed, not in a good way, in a bad way, probably more likely in a bad way, but just so you understand where he came from and what he was around at the time when he was young and what he grew up into. Because his brothers were involved in this. Older brothers were involved in this as well. Not just the raiders, but just the life of crime in general.
Yeah, so, and it sounds like he grew up in, like, again, like smack dab in the middle of a war, basically, as a young kid.
Yeah, and we're gonna jump into that a little later on. And the Lawrence Massacre as a focal point had broader implications than just the horrific act itself. It intensified the Union's resolve to crack down on Confederate guerrillas in Missouri and Kansas. And it was a direct, cause and effect that led the General Thomas Ewing's controversial Order Number 11, which forced the evacuation of rural areas in 4 Missouri counties to deprive guerrillas of local support. And it was this order that directly affected Jesse James's family as they were forced to leave their farm. So it's setting up a really tumultuous and not favorable view from Jesse's family, and it to be living there and be like, I got to leave now. And again, the man and the government and the army, however you want to say it, you push people to an edge and they're in a world that's horrific, and then you make it worse, and it's just going to stoke the fire, basically. And that's what this did. So the displacement and hardship further fueled Jesse's resentment against the Union itself. So against what they believed as well, there's a lot of other contexts that they despised the Union for. And so it was in this turbulent backdrop, the line between soldiers and outlaws blurred. Young men like Jesse James, who grew up amidst this violence, saw their worldview shaped by conflict. The harsh realities of war, combined with the devastation it brought to the communities, fostered a sense of resentment and rebellion, and this was particularly true for those who, like the James family, had suffered at the hands of Union soldiers and sympathizers. And so that's our scene here. Not to sympathize with the ideology, more just trying to paint the full picture in what I found. And that's the scene we're in right now. Jacob, how do you feel sitting in this scene? Are you okay?
Thank you for asking how I feel, man. No one's asked me that in a long time. No, I'm good, man. I'm just like, again, I'm fascinated because genuinely, if you would have sat here and asked me before this call, like, hey, what do you think the backdrop of Jesse James was going to be like? I would be like, oh yeah, it's probably going to be very similar to Billy the Kid, that podcast, but this
relatively
sounds
light is what you were expecting.
Yeah, a little bit lighter than this already. So this really does, like, again, kind of change my viewpoint immediately on how I should be viewing the rest of the story. Obviously not condoning, because I'm already prepping for how horrible, like, of acts that are coming down the pike, which I'm excited to hear just for fascination purposes. But it does paint an interesting picture, like, about living in such a tumultuous time that you're right. Like, that's kind of does what sparks people's, like, yeah, I'm going to fight against that. I'm going to rise against that. And so I'm very excited to see where this goes next.
Yeah, well, we can jump right into it with the main story and jump into Jesse James's life. So Jesse's family was staunchly pro-Confederate. His father, Robert James, a Baptist minister and hemp farmer, owned slaves and strongly supported the Southern cause. After his father's death, James's mother, Zerelda, remarried a wealthy farmer, Benjamin Sims, who was also held Confederate sympathies and was a Confederate supporter. This environment was fertile ground for the ideals that would eventually drive Jesse into the arms of these notorious leaders that I mentioned previously.
Right.
These men became symbols of Confederate resistance, and to a young populace and young Jesse James, they were heroes fighting against what he and his family viewed as Northern aggression. James, barely 16, followed in his older brother Frank's footsteps, joining Quantrill's raiders, and with the end of the Civil War in 1865, the Reconstruction period was a time of great change and uncertainty. Jesse, like many former Confederates, found it difficult to adapt to the new reality of a Union victory. The Missouri of his youth, with its clear-cut allegiances, was gone. In its place was a state grappling with complexities of reintegration and the bitter memories of conflict.
What were you doing at 16, Jeffrey? Because I guarantee you it wasn't joining a group and a gang.
I was in a band.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, I guess that's the same thing.
And I was making inventions, and I had an invention notebook, and I thought I was,
Leonardo da Vinci. That's your hero. We know. We get it. That's why we're here.
Up to people like my Quantrills and Bloody Bill were Harrison Ford and Shia LaBeouf at the time. I can't lie. And other such people.
I just can't help but, like, picture myself obviously hearing that age and being like, dude, did I still have braces at 16? Like, what the heck?
You did.
At these, like, no, there's no way. At 16?
Yeah.
I don't remember that.
I'm pretty sure. I remember.
Wow. That's wild. Yeah. And here we got Jesse James, like, in the environment that he grew up in.
Yeah.
Seeing his older brothers and, like, his family around him kind of support that. It made it like a very easy transition for him to just move right into the ranks there, which is wild.
Yeah. You do what you know. And that's what he knew, And the first bank robbery that was attributed to Jesse James occurred. Do you want to take a guess on the date? Just give me a month.
I'm going to say February.
Wow. It's not like you can see what I wrote.
It's not. It's not like I can see your paper.
Correct. You are right. The first robbery attributed to Jesse James occurred on February 13th, 1866 at the Clay County Savings Association in Liberty, Missouri.
Oh, wow.
And so this act was more than just a crime. It was a statement for Jesse and his crew, because at this point in time, he had his own little crew. Okay. So he was robbing banks, and later trains that turned into stagecoaches symbolized, in his view, a continued resistance against the institutions and powers that represented the Union victory. So this was a bit of a middle finger, is continuing the little, the life of crime and
sticking it to the man.
Right. And we'll get into his kind of dual persona here, but Jesse's charisma and bravado, combined with the political context of his actions, began to draw public attention in the surrounding area and beyond. So the media of the time started to become fascinated by the daring and audacious, look at that word I pulled out, acts of these outlaws. And they began to craft a narrative around Jesse James. He was a focal point and was portrayed as a sort of Robin Hood figure for the Confederate supporters, a narrative that he himself encouraged and cultivated. But this romanticized view often overlooked the violence and terror that these robberies brought to the victims and the communities that he was enacting these robberies in. Yes.
All right. To quote some really great movies, you can kill the man, but you can't kill the idea. That was Jesse James' whole stick, wasn't it? That's what it seems like.
No, completely. And he was fueled by it. And, there were towns that would aid and abet him because, again, they saw him as this figure that was sticking it to the man and a middle finger to the Union victory by attacking banks, stagecoaches, like I said. And that's part of what kind of grew his allure to the people that he was around. And also the way that the media portrayed him. They portrayed him as this young gun Robin Hood, stealing from the rich or the government, the man, and providing and, sticking it to the man. That's basically what he was doing. So yeah,
it sounds like he encouraged it. Like he was totally on board with this view because he knew kind of like that statement, right? That like you can create an idea that like kind of almost detaches from you and becomes its own little thing. And so at least, like even just from your writing and seeing this and your research, like it sounds very much like, first of all, he was smart enough to get that idea. He wasn't just a cold-blooded, violent killer. He was smart enough to realize what was going on and to play into that, which obviously leads to his name, still being spoken in circles now as like famous cowboys.
Right. And he definitely had I think from what I don't want to portray him incorrectly, but I'm pretty sure it was viewed as he had a wit to him. He knew what he was doing and he had tactics. And I think from my understanding, from even just reading what I wrote and put together again, it's through just being around it from the time he was born, his brother, his father, and being around the violence and the gangs and the belief system. I think he had a bit more, maybe tactics to him than other leaders, and kind of again they speak highly of his charisma, and that's an important thing when you want a cult type leader. You want that charismatic walk on water. Like
no one wants to follow a boring cult leader.
No, you either rule by fear or maybe a little bit of both. A little fear, little wink and a smile. I don't know.
Crazy.
I've never.
You speak from experience.
Cult, so
I was about to say. What kind of experience are you speaking of right now, Jeffrey?
Has a cult. No.
Where do we sign up?
www.casualhistory.com.
Oh, there you go. Look at our own little history cult. We got this.
Yeah. So as Jesse James and his gang continued their string of robberies across Missouri and the neighboring states, they slowly became legends in their own time. However, the law was never far behind. Good old Johnny Law. The pursuit of Jesse James by various law enforcement agencies and detectives would soon turn into one of the most significant manhunts in American history. And amidst the growing fame and infamy, a pivotal moment was on the horizon. So after a string of years of him being in his heyday, the year 1876 is a pivotal one. This would bring with it an event that would not only challenge the very existence of the James Younger gang, but would also propel Jesse James into the history of American folklore. And we're going to jump into it right after this ad break.
Want to make a podcast? Spotify's got the platform that allows you to make one super easily, then distribute it everywhere and even earn money. All in one place for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters, and here's how it works. Spotify for Podcasters allows you to record and edit podcasts right from your phone or computer. So no matter what your setup is like, you can start creating today. And then you can distribute your podcast to Spotify and everywhere else that podcasts are heard. Video podcasts are also available on Spotify, and with Spotify podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions. Best of all, it's totally free with no catch. Ever since I discovered Spotify for podcasters, I feel like having options like video podcasts and question and answer polls has allowed me to be creative on a whole nother level. I highly recommend that you give it a try. Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started. Welcome back from that beautiful ad experience you just heard with the sultry voice of Jacob here. Welcome back. We're talking about Jesse James, violence, it sounds like, and the Civil War. So we're glad you're here. Is that good? Was that a good intro? Our topics for the day. Yeah, all of a sudden become an ASMR podcast.
Violence, gangs, guns, and Civil War.
Wow. Tune in next week.
Yeah, we'll probably do something similar.
We probably will.
Yeah. So thanks for listening to that ad. As he said, it means a ton if you could give us a rating and review on Spotify and or Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to the podcast. It just helps us continue to grow, and to be able to do this full time would be a dream that me and Jacob both have. And we'll just leave it at that and get back to Jesse James.
In order for us to do that, you guys have to share with your friends. So if you know someone, even if they really don't like history, share it with them. Force it on them. Okay? They'll love you for it.
We would love to be professional, unprofessional history storytellers. That would be a great title to have. And so with that, we have to continue our streak of good podcasts. And we're hoping this is one. Jesse James, he is the man we're here to talk about. So I led off at the point where there was a pivotal moment in the year 1876. Now, the James Younger Gang's raid on the First National Bank of Northfield on September 7th, 1876 was more than just a bold move. It was a venture into unfamiliar territory. Northfield, Minnesota was far from the gang's usual operating grounds in Missouri and Kentucky. This shift in location was strategic, but also symbolic, something that he seemed to do repetitively. The target, being the First National Bank, was rumored to hold a substantial amount of money, which doesn't hurt, and had connections to Adelbert Ames, a Union general during the Civil War and Reconstruction governor of Mississippi. So again, going after a political figure, a political symbol point for his belief in the Confederacy to screw the Union. So he held this grudge and this symbol as a rallying call, I think, probably for his bandits to do these daring acts, I would assume. I'm sure it was financial,
right.
There's
Plus
definitely
a little
financial
cash flow never hurts.
But it definitely was intertwined and intermixed with everything that he did. So Ames, just a little backstory, was representative of the Union victory and the changes in the South that the gang, in particular Jesse James, deeply resented. So the choice of Northfield was also influenced by the gang's belief that they would encounter less resistance in a northern state and that they were just weak old Northerners. What are they going to do,
What was the term? Was it Yankees? Is that terrible to say now?
I have no clue. So
I don't know.
Someone inform us if that's horrible to say now. Compared to the usual targets in the South, they underestimated these Northerners. And however, the resolve of the Northfield citizens came as a surprise. Well, that's to say the least. Okay, the gang, including Jesse and Frank James, his brother, Cole, Jim, and Bob Younger, and three others. I love how it's three others. I could never find their names. How do you like to be the three others in the Jesse James gang?
Yeah. It's Jacob and Jeffrey and the others.
Right. The other guys. They all rode into Northfield under the guise of horse traders. But their behavior soon aroused suspicion among the townspeople, which I'm just going to say this out there. Okay, now, even in modern times, you come into a small town of 1,000 or less, and you're a little bit out of place, you're going to get recognized. That's all I'm going to say.
That happens now. Small towns. Everybody knows everyone. You can't get past that.
if they came in like horse traders, oh, we're just a gang of 15 horse traders that look kind of rough and I'd assume not the cleanest people in the world.
You can't tell me they were quiet on the path to this place. Like, you can't tell me that there weren't rumors going around of some violent gang causing like stir-ups around the place.
True, that might have been, there might have been lead up, but also their infamy was a tale that everyone knew. Again, they were in the media. Everyone knew of Jesse James and his gang of outlaws. So that, I don't think it maybe was expected in Minnesota that they would go that far, but still they were suspicious of these horse traders who said, essentially like the movie The Benchwarmers, handed them a piece of paper that said, I am 12. And with a $20 bill. That's essentially how they tried to get into this town. And I don't know how they thought it would work, to be honest with you. As the gang members,
have confidence, okay? You just got to have confidence.
They had a lot of confidence, a lot of maybe not warranted confidence, because you'll see.
Okay.
As the gang members entered the bank in Northfield and revealed their intentions by stick 'em up.
Put the money in the bag.
Exactly. The cashier, how do you like this? Joseph Lee is a badass. The cashier, Joseph Lee Haywood, refused to open the safe, falsely claiming it was locked with the time lock and he could do nothing about it.
Heck yeah. You go, man.
Yeah. Outside, the townspeople, having realized a robbery was underway, basically began to arm themselves. The word spread. This little town was like, this guy's in our bank right now trying to steal our money. That's
we gotta
our
rally
money.
Together. Heck yeah.
Like, that's your money. Like, in that period of time, you're putting your physical money. If you lived in that town, I'm putting my money in the bank in downtown square, whatever.
That's your family's livelihood.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. I'd be fighting side by side with you, man.
Yeah. So basically, the whisper spread that this was happening as it was happening, and everyone began to arm themselves in the town. A student from the nearby Carleton College, Henry Wheeler, played a pivotal role when basically he secured a vantage point from a building across the street and started firing upon the gang members guarding the door.
Oh, wow.
And so this ensued chaos, as you can imagine. And it was chaos unlike anything the gang had ever faced. Up to this point, you stick a gun in someone's face and say, hand me the money. I think up to this point, they've experienced relatively little pushback, and I understand that. Like, who's going to risk their life when you have a gun in your face and they're requesting money or whatever it may be?
But this was in Minnesota.
Exactly.
They're damn tough in Minnesota,
If you're from Minnesota, leave a comment.
That's please. Right. Minnesota proud. Leave a comment.
Yeah. Rather than being passive bystanders, they became actively engaged and started to fire upon and engage a gunfight with the gang. Wow. Gunfire echoed through the streets as a fierce and unexpected battle unfolded. The gang, caught off guard by this vigorous defense, scrambled to flee. In their haste, they left without any of the bank's money, and the raid turned into a desperate fight for survival. So they were on the back foot. They didn't know what the hell was happening, and they, at this point, all plans out the window.
Yeah. Okay. Your plan's gone to shit. Time to go to plan B.
It's as, what's the movie Shoot with Robert Downey Jr. He says, survive. Do you know what I'm talking about? Tropic Thunder.
Yes. Tropic Thunder.
That's essentially what Jesse James said to himself, and so did his brother. So the result of the raid was disastrous for the gang. Two of the gang members, Seal Miller and Bill Stiles, were killed in the shootout. The younger brothers were all wounded, and the gang's cohesion crumbled and fled in the aftermath. The raid not only failed in its objective, but also marked the beginning of the end for the gang itself. So,
lost all street cred.
Yeah. Honestly, it is a bit like boxing, okay? If you get 20-0, everyone is like, this guy's the baddest mofo in the world. You lose one, everyone's going to go, he's not that good anymore.
There you go. Exposed.
Jesse James is a boxer of his time. I don't know why. I've been into boxing recently. Sorry for the random reference. But yeah, it was the signal of the end for Jesse James. James's charisma, power, and the gang itself. So in the aftermath of the Northfield raid, they disbanded, and the Jesse James younger gang Jesse himself found himself in a precarious position. His notoriety had reached its peak, making it increasingly difficult for him to operate as he had in the past under any disguises, shadows. The media truly did him in. Like, anonymity is out the window at this point. Okay, you're at the
and
peak
now
of
you
your
don't have
career.
your gang to back you up, right? Like, so now you're just like,
yeah,
you're just a bunch of stragglers left to like with like world famous, like almost like bounty on your head, probably from most like sheriffs around the area.
I wonder what he kept. I wonder what he kept. Like, if he was a saver, did he have a treasure chest at some point? Who knows?
Yeah.
Because no matter what it was, it seemed to be like an addiction. Because despite the setbacks, Jesse, along with his brother Frank, who both survived, continued their repeated attempts at criminal activities. They formed a new gang, but the cohesion and loyalty of the hardened James younger gang were no longer. Okay, you get a bunch of B roster guys to play in your all-star team. You're not going to be as good anymore.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And that's plus essentially what happened.
It sounds very much like he like didn't know any other way. Like maybe he had done this for so long and had lived this life for so long that like even that sort of setback, even though how devastating it would be, he just had to move forward because he was like, I don't know how to live any other way. And he can't get around his notoriety now. So like not very many options.
Not many options at all. And it was on the back of this context of desperation and distrust within the gang itself that Jesse James's final days essentially would unfold in a state of paranoia and this kind of loose scraggle gang of new people that he brought on. And so Jesse's last robbery took place on September 7th, 1881 at the Blue Cut in Missouri. It was a far cry from his earlier successes, and the law was closing in at this point. Seeking a semblance of normalcy, Jesse moved to St. Joseph, Missouri under the alias Thomas Howard, posing as a respectable citizen, and it was here that he lived with his wife and children, hoping to evade capture. But even in hiding, Jesse planned more robberies. That addiction to the thrill was not relinquished, and his outlaw life still called to this man. After all that he's been through, he still was planning new jobs and new heists. So among the new members of his gang were Robert and Charlie Ford, brothers who had long idealized Jesse James. The Ford brothers were not driven at this point by loyalty, but by opportunism. Okay. Unknown to Jesse, Robert Ford had been in secret negotiations with Missouri Governor Thomas T. Crittenden, who had offered essentially a reward for Jesse's capture, dead or alive. And Ford saw an opportunity not only for financial gain, but also for amnesty for his own criminal activities. He thought, I get Jesse, I bring Jesse down, I can wash clean my past, supposedly that the governor was offering, and I get money, and I get notoriety that I'm the one who took down Jesse James.
Wow.
And it led to this eventual end. And I'm not sure how you picture Jesse James's end. I imagined it similar to Billy the Kid in a shootout of some sort. Sadly, this is one of betrayal. On April 3rd, 1882, the treachery reached the climax. While Jesse was planning a new robbery with the Ford brothers in his home, he noticed, get this, this blew me, this kind of blew my mind because I'm never going to dust my house the same.
What?
He noticed dust on a picture frame. Okay. And he said, wait a minute, I need to clean this. I guess he was just, around the house. They were talking with the Ford brothers. He noticed dust on a picture frame, and he got a chair, stood on the chair to clean it. In this unguarded moment, with his back turned, Robert Ford seized his opportunity. he drew his revolver and shot Jesse James in the back of the head, killing him instantly.
Wow.
Jesse, the notorious outlaw who had eluded capture for so long, was felled not in a shootout or a dramatic arrest, but in a moment of domestic vulnerability and betrayal from his gang.
Wow. Plus, dude, you're in the West. Everything's got dust on it. I could wait. What do you? He was in his own home. I'm just joking, but still,
wait.
That's
you
insane.
Couldn't wait.
Oh, wait a second. I gotta clean the dishes.
Right.
In the middle
that's
of
what it
planning a
came
heist.
to. Yeah.
Dude just wanted a normal life, but did not lead a normal life.
He must have felt comfortable. You know,
he must have trusted them.
Yeah, the Ford brothers did their job, and even though his parent is, littered with paranoia from what I read, I mean, you don't turn your back. Maybe he just thought it wouldn't happen. Like, he's lasted this long. You've been in so much, gunfights and intense situations. And at that point, do you really think you're going to die in your own home?
Yeah.
Probably not.
Probably not.
And so in the aftermath of Jesse James' assassination, it sent shockwaves through the media and the nation itself. The manner of his death was of particular interest, and it only added to his mythos, essentially. He was portrayed by a martyr by some, a victim of cowardly betrayal. For others, his death was seen as the long overdue end of a ruthless criminal. Robert Ford, however, rather than being hailed as a hero, was labeled a coward and vilified for his act of betrayal. He and his brother Charlie were charged with murder, but were quickly pardoned by Governor Crittenden, who basically sent him on the mission.
Right.
And as most stories go, when you're promised money and fame to do a dirty job, you don't get the rewards, and he got neither. He didn't get the notoriety, and guess what? The governor didn't pay him. He was never fully paid for the job. So, yeah, lose for him, but the governor got what he wanted. Jesse James is out of the picture, and he is able to claim that he took down Jesse James. And the death of Jesse James is symbolistic and is carried on not just because of his story personally, but he really was the last symbol for that timepiece. And as it marked an end of that era, his life and death encapsulates the complexities and contradictions of the American Wild West at the time that was transferring into a new century. And so, a figure of both admiration and condemnation, Jesse James remains a subject of enduring fascination and debate like we've talked about today. I don't know how you want to view him.
Right.
You could view him I wouldn't say a victim of his circumstance, but he definitely was influenced by his circumstances, and it led to his life that we know of today. And that's the story of Jesse James.
I mean, I can't help but think that the Ford brothers saw what Jesse James was going through and thought to themselves, like, I don't want that. I don't want to be a guy hiding, right? Like, trying to lay low and like knowing that your life is going to end that way with the walls closing in. Right. Like, I could also see that being a motivating factor. But yeah, I know I feel such mixed emotions where like the dude did such violent things and was not a nice guy by any stretch of the imagination. But also, I also had a little like internal chuckle when hearing that the Ford brothers did not get like, hey, you guys are heroes. But besides, like, you betrayed someone in their own home, dusting a picture frame. Also, I want to know what the picture was in that frame. I need to know.
Yeah. Could you imagine? What if it was like a self-portrait?
Yeah, it was just a picture of himself he was polishing.
Exactly, an egomaniac a little bit.
Man,
I wouldn't
that's wild.
Put it past him. I wouldn't put it past putting that. I mean, I would only assume, and this is an assumption, obviously, that after so long of doing this, again, life of crime, you're in high intense situations, you're in life or death situations all of the time, and you come out unscathed for so long. It probably isn't a thrill. You probably think, I'm all right. Maybe there's a bit of ego. There has to be a bit of ego. I don't think you could do what he does and did as a leader, as the notorious, infamous Jesse James without an ego, you know?
Right. I think also it just, every person is going to have a moment of like vulnerability and weakness, like throughout. Like no matter how bad you are, there's going to be a moment where you're sitting on the toilet like Tyrion Lannister and get shot with a bow and arrow. Sorry,
Right.
Not Tyrion. You know who I'm talking about, his father.
The father,
right.
Yeah.
Sitting
Spoiler
on
alert.
Yeah, oh god. Oh, I just ruined it.
Guys, we're years past. If you haven't seen
been a while. Don't come at me in the comments.
Yeah.
They're more going to be mad that I got the wrong name because I know it's the father. But like you're going to have a moment no matter how bad you are. And so, yeah, man, it just really speaks to already the walls were closing in on him and he surrounded him with people that like, again, were of his like cut from the same cloth as him. Like there was not going to be a moment of safety where you're going to be able to turn your back on anyone. That could have happened during any part of his reign. Someone just goes, yep, I'm going to turn you in. You're the most famous outlaw right now. Everybody would love to be the person associated with that name. And so that could have happened at any point in time. It just happened to happen while he was cleaning and dusting off a picture frame
of himself. Let's
himself.
Just picture it that way. I think that's better to picture it that way. Kind of makes it a little interesting caveat. But if you guys have made it this far, let us know what you think. I really am interested to hear your opinion on Jesse James, the time period itself. Maybe there's some interesting points I didn't get to. There's so many more podcasts in this realm of Civil War, different figures transferring from the mid 1800s into the 1900s that we're going to go back. We're going to go back to this time period, and I can't wait to do it. But let us know what you thought about Jesse James in this podcast. I appreciate you guys listening this far. Jacob, thanks for being the wingman. Jacob will be back next week. You're my James. I'm the Jesse. You're the James. You're the James, the older brother. I'm the younger brother. So I would be Jesse James.
Oh, wow. Of course you take the more famous name. Of course you would.
Just saying. We'll be back next week. Jacob will bring in the next subject and he will be telling the story. And now we will be getting into the fun game reoccurring segment we do every week with Leo.
Welcome back, brave time travelers, to Time Traveler Trivia. I'm Leo, your ethereal guide. Are you ready for a challenge that transcends the ages? Here's how our game works. In each round, I will regale you with 3 tales from the vast corridors of time. These tales will be strange, bewildering, and sometimes downright wacky. But here's the twist. Only one of these stories is a true piece of historical lore, while the others are clever fabrications from my ghostly imagination. Your task, to use your knowledge, intuition, and perhaps a bit of luck to discern the real historical event from the phantasmal fiction.
All right.
Leo's bumping.
Dude, it's become a dance jam for me, so I need to know if you guys are doing that too while you're listening to this in your headphones or your car or wherever you're listening to this podcast, because I think we danced the entire time that was playing.
We did.
It's now becoming a tradition.
It is, and I love it. I love that music. That bass line gets me going.
Man.
You know what it makes me want to do? Makes me want to win.
Oh, want to win? Oh, well, You're going to have to go through me first. That's the whole goal of the game. So with that note, Jeffrey, let's just transition to round 1, where we're going to have to guess the correct story. And I really like these rounds are also put into certain themes, and you're going to notice what they are. But I think it's really cool. So we could just kind of get started with that.
Round 1. The ban on snowmen. In 16th century Russia, did Tsar Ivan IV, Ivan the Terrible, issue a decree banning the building of snowmen, believing them to be pagan idols. Silent Sundays. Was there a law in 19th century England that required all citizens to abstain from speaking aloud on Sundays as a way to promote rest and moral reflection? No high heels in Greece. Is there an ancient law in Greece, still technically in effect, prohibiting the wearing of high heels at certain historical sites to prevent damage to the ancient stonework?
Wow. These are all, I love this every week because all these stories are crazy, but they're just crazy enough to be true. like
Right.
just on that line. All right.
I mean, the first one, believable, you know?
Right.
Second one,
Wait, the snowman? You think the snowman
Yeah.
story is believable? Yeah, totally.
who's not gonna see snowmen? I mean, how elaborate are these snowmen?
I don't know.
Snowmen?
It's in 16th century Russia. I don't know what they call it the snowman, but
Just
yeah.
wanted to know. The second one, I would love if that were real. That would be really fun. If like all of New York City said, we're gonna be silent for
we're gonna
whole
play the
day.
silent game.
My life would change dramatically.
Oh,
I mean,
dude.
For those who haven't noticed this far into the podcast, you probably hear some sirens in the back, and I'm in as much of a isolated room as I can get to. That's
Right.
just New York. So if we said Sundays, everyone shut up, I would be so happy.
Dude, I think it'd be life-changing, man. Like with the amount of here I go. I'm going to go on my little spiel about like how much is happening in life and how much you read and stuff, but genuinely, if we just had a whole day where it was like, yeah, you're not allowed to talk. It is completely silent. We just need complete silence and chill stillness. Like would that improve
The society as a whole?
people's mood?
Yeah, for sure. 1,000%. I have
like
no
it.
doubt about it.
I'm convincing myself more and more that this has to be the answer because I want it to be the answer.
A little yogi practice, little, Buddhist mentality, and I think self-reflection, and I think it would do nothing but help. But do I think that someone thought of it and said, "I'm going to make it happen"? I don't know. The third one being the high heels on historical landmarks that is still in place seems plausible. I've never been to Italy, so
It's
maybe
Greece. Yeah.
Oh, Greece. Sorry, I've never been to Greece either. So 2 for 2.
Still
0 for
applies.
2. And yeah, I mean, I have my gut instinct here, but
Me
I'm not
too.
going to pretend to act like I have a correct answer in my brain.
All right. Well, I'm only going to tell you what my answer is if you can't change yours. So you better lock that in right now, and I'm going to trust you. I'm looking you in the eye.
I'm locking it in.
Okay. So I actually do think the Silent Sundays is real just because I think religious, right? Sundays make sense, like just connected to something holy. Like the amount of stuff that is tied to religious stuff that seems ridiculous in history has to be like a mile long. And so
Like
I'm just
putting
adding this to the list.
Like putting the Pope on the dead Pope on the stand.
Yeah, that wasn't for a Sunday political reason. That was more for vengeance. But yes,
Yeah.
technically.
But the crazy
that's my
stories, around religion in general. For those who don't know, that was another round back in a previous episode,
which we were shocked by. Some person was mad at a guy who died, and so they decided to put him on trial, his dead body on trial, and they found him guilty. That was a real story from history. So none of these are too out there, which is really fun. I
did have my answer locked in, and you got to trust me. Mine was also B, number 2. I thought the Silent Sundays seemed to be in line with other stories and didn't seem too crazy, where it makes me think it's true. So hit me with the true answer if you got it. I want to know.
All right. Let's do it. So the answer was no high heels in Greece.
Wow.
In Greece, there is indeed a regulation that prohibits the wearing of high heels at a certain ancient historical sites. This law is in place to prevent damage to millennia-old stonework and preserve historic locations. At least it's for a good cause. So I could be wrong for a good cause. I get it. Take your shoes off in the house.
Yeah, exactly. Essentially.
Yes.
It makes sense. Do I think it's a little bit pointed? High heels? What about canes?
Yeah.
They say no canes for the old men. Can't walk in here,
I just imagine everybody in sandals. Don't ask me why. I just do.
Yeah, everyone's in sandals. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so 0-0 here. Not a strong start, but let's get into round 2.
Round 2. The goldfish swallowing craze. In the 1920s, did a bizarre trend sweep through American colleges where students competed to see how many live goldfish they could swallow? Moonlight mazes. In Victorian England, was it fashionable to navigate elaborate mazes by moonlight, with the most famous one located in the gardens of Buckingham Palace? The Great Pigeon Dressage. In 18th century France, did aristocrats take part in pigeon dressage, training pigeons to perform synchronized aerial acrobatics?
Yo, I want to get into pigeon dressage.
Yeah, me too.
Sounds fun.
Where do you sign up for that club?
I just want a pigeon in general.
I mean, I'm sure you could get one, man.
I'm in New York.
You work hard at anything. You do. You work hard enough at anything in life, and you can have it, Jeffrey. You can have yourself a pigeon. A pigeon too. You could have whatever you want, whatever the word is. You can have it.
Pigeon too.
Yes.
Yeah. So pigeons doing choreographed acrobatics. I don't know.
Seems a little.
Anything strike you off the bat?
Yes,
Give
but
me
do
your
you
answer.
have an answer? Because I'm not giving you clues, even though we're both wrong, and it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Why does the goldfish one sound plausible? Because it said, because if it was earlier, I would think no. But for some reason in my head, thinking of the 1920s specifically in goldfish, why does that ring a bell? Like, why does that have a thread for me?
If you're going for A, I respect it. I'm gonna go for C. I'm gonna think there's some
you're going
old
for
kooks.
pigeons.
I think there's some old kooks that really thought they can make it happen. And pigeons are not stupid. I mean, they can.
No.
I mean, they can fly from one point to another and carry messages. So why couldn't they?
You're just really into the
do a
arts,
little dressage, you know. So I think I'm gonna lock in C. If you're locking in A.
Wow, you were so confident in this. Okay, well, yeah, I mean, the Moonlight Mazes one is interesting because it's the most like the least out there, right? Hey, there's nothing to do in Victorian England. I'm going to run through a maze in the middle of the night. That
sounds fun.
It doesn't sound like totally like something like a wacko would do. Maybe just a little bit, but not like as crazy out there as some of the stories that we've had on this little game show. And so, but yeah, I don't know why. I have to go with the goldfish. I'm just going with my gut, and we're going to find out how wrong I am right now.
Quick, everyone listening, mentally pick your option, and let's see what we got. What's the true answer here?
That's right. And if you miss the question, you have to swallow a live goldfish. So that is your good luck, Jeffrey.
Join me. Just go get a pigeon.
Just go get a pigeon.
That's
I
your
much
punishment
prefer that.
or reward, depending on how you view it.
All right. So the answer is
goldfish, isn't it?
The goldfish swallowing craze.
You look too happy.
No, I did not. I know. I'm so happy. I'm so happy.
Yeah,
and so does everybody else that doesn't have to swallow goldfish right now as a result. So the trend was true. It became a bizarre fad in American colleges in the 1920s. Students would compete to see how many live goldfish they could swallow, making it a widely talked about and somewhat peculiar pastime of that era. Yeah, I'll say that's a little messed up, dude. Poor goldfish, man.
And like swallowing them whole and alive.
Pick on someone your own size. That's what I gotta say.
They gotta get sick from that, right?
I would imagine.
There's got to be some FDA rule now that's like, hey, don't swallow goldfish live because someone in the 1920s died. Like,
now I just picture a goldfish with a sticker on it, a warning label on every single goldfish that's sold. Yeah. Man,
maybe that's where they got their name.
We need warning labels for everything, Jeff. Good Lord.
How crazy would that be if goldfish crackers actually got their name from this story? Do you think? Does that seem
I have
wild?
no clue. It seems a little wild.
Google it while we're looking at this next and third and final round, which is the only opportunity for me to tie you.
That's right. All the pressure's on you.
Victory.
Round 3. The Cardiff Giant. In the 19th century was a giant petrified man known as the Cardiff Giant, discovered in New York, sparking a frenzy of interest and debate until it was revealed to be a hoax. The lost city of Atlantis. In the early 20th century, did a famous explorer claim to have found the lost city of Atlantis near the coast of Spain, only to later admit it was a publicity stunt. The moon's inhabitants. In the 1830s, did a newspaper publish a series of articles claiming that a telescope had found evidence of life on the moon, including bat-like humanoids and unicorns, which was later revealed to be a hoax.
Later revealed.
Yeah, you know,
later revealed.
Unicorn sounds plausible.
Do you mind? So I'm going to be completely transparent here. Okay.
You know the answer, right?
No. I did not hear the first two because I have a good reason for it. I need you to repeat it to me.
Please.
I was looking up, where did goldfish get their name?
Please enlighten us.
And I'm sad to say it was not because of the 1920s craze of swallowing goldfish.
It's because they were delicious.
It's because they were delicious, and it came off of a man's attempt to make his wife happy. And I guess he wanted to create a snack, and he created goldfish.
Wow.
Didn't really say where he got the name, but that's all I got for you. Sorry for being a little bit of a letdown.
That was a little anticlimactic, but that's okay.
I just wanted to give the reason and the excuse of why I did not hear the first two. So can you please tell me what the first two options were?
So option number 1 was the Cardiff Giant. So in the 19th century, there was a giant petrified man, known as the Cardiff Giant, discovered in New York, sparking a frenzy of interest and debate until it was revealed to be a hoax. That was number 1.
Okay.
Number 2 was about the lost city of Atlantis. So in the 20th century, did a famous explorer claim to have found the lost city of Atlantis near the coast of Spain, only to admit later that it was a publicity stunt. Those were the first two.
Okay. Yeah. Got my answer already.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think so. And me being a New Yorker, there's your hint. I think I know what it is, but I don't know for sure. Like, to be honest with you, it's just my hunch, and I really want you to go for a different answer.
I definitely am. Don't worry about it. I'm
really?
going for.
You don't think that's true?
I'm not saying I don't think it's true. I'm just saying that, like, for some reason, the moon one is calling to me. The only
unicorns.
That's the only word that throws me off. That's literally it. But like, also, I don't know. There was like, you remember the War of the Worlds situation where someone read like a book on radio, and then people started like losing their minds, thinking there was an alien invasion. Like that's what that reminds me of. Right. And so I don't know. I mean,
fair play.
It's probably not true just because of the unicorns bit. If it just said bat-like humanoids and there was life on the moon, then I'd be like, yeah, people are making up crazy hoax stories about that stuff.
Right. All right. So we got our
going
answers
with
then,
it.
yeah?
I'm doing it.
All right. So I'm going A. You're going C. If you're listening to this, mentally pick your answer while Jacob
a lot of
takes
pressure.
his time to find out.
We cannot end on a tie for the second week in a row, Jeffrey. I will not have it.
Well,
we will rock, paper, scissors. We did too. We will rock, paper, scissors.
Okay. All right. Let's go. Right. What's the answer? Hit me with it.
The answer is the Cardiff Giant.
Let's go.
In 1869, the Cardiff Giant was discovered in New York and initially claimed to be a petrified prehistoric man. It drew significant public interest and debate until it was exposed as a hoax. The giant was actually a carved stone figure created by a man named George Hull.
Nice.
Okay. So, wow. There you go. So tied it straight up, Jeffrey. So we are tied. I gotta add more rounds.
Innings, overtime, however you want to say it. And I think this is going to be settled in a very quick, very fast, if you're listening, game of rock, paper, scissors. Ready?
Yes.
Scissors.
Rock, paper, scissors, go?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Please.
All right. Ready?
Put your hand in front of the camera, please.
That's right. Everybody visualize me winning right now.
Okay. Ready.
Right. Rock, paper, scissors, go.
And I win.
You were late.
No, I was not late.
There was lag on this feed.
Replay. I need a replay.
No, man. All right. I give it to you. You won fair and square.
Thanks. I know.
Good game. Good game, sir.
Thanks, everyone, for listening to another episode of Casual History.
Best one yet.
We'll be back next week. And as Jacob claims, he will try to beat the best episode we've ever done, which is this one, apparently.
Damn straight. I got you.
Let us know what you thought in the comments and on social media. We truly want to know and want to get your feedback and would love ratings, reviews, messages, anything you got. We want it. Hate
Help
mail,
us out a ton.
Like we've said, we love that shit. Give it to us.
Bring it.
We'll see you next week.
All right. Bye.